Welcome to another video for GDS Estimating V15. In this one I'd like to talk about the parts list and specifically changing multipliers and working with finish colors. So let's get right into it and click on parts list from the main menu there. And you'll see that this catalog has quite a few finishes set up, and the easiest way to look at all that at once is by clicking edit on a given part. So you'll see here we've got basically 10 different finish names, and a lot of them have NA, which means not applicable, of course, and it means that this particular part that I'm editing only has a mill or no finish price, which means all these other finish colors are not applicable to this part. So we don't bother showing zeros and information like that for something that's not needed. So these parts all have just the one price that applies to those parts for the finish. But when we get down here into doors and probably extrusions and all that do have different finishes, those parts will show prices and they'll be supported colors. So in this case, these parts are not available in like a no finish or a mill finish. So that field is actually unsupported or disabled. So that's kind of how the finishes work in this program. And you can actually change the supporting value of a certain finish, but only if it's zero. So only if there's a zero price. So if the program finds a price and you're trying to make it unsupported, it's not going to let you do it. So if there is a finish that has zero pricing throughout the whole catalog and you don't need that finish anymore, you can just unselect the supported checkbox here and it'll basically hide that finish and it won't be shown anymore in the list here. So that's kind of what the supported thing means. Is if it's supported, that means it can have a value and it's going to show up in the list, and if it's unsupported, it's going to be hidden, or it's going to be just have a blank in it right here. So again, if it's unsupported and there's nothing that uses it in the entire list, then that won't even show up because it knows that there's no values anywhere in it. So that's a fairly new thing in WinBidPro, and wanted to show you that. So in keeping with that finish thing, let's go up to other actions. We can actually hit edit finishes here, and I've already kind of played with this where something new to the program is part suffixes. So this is like a finish code, and a lot of manufacturers have a specific code for their colors, and instead of a text kind of word that describes the color, they actually have a code. So if we know this from the manufacturers and they want this in their catalogs, when we do updates, we'll put that kind of information in here. But for older catalogs, if you're using something older that hasn't been updated like that, you can go in yourself and add the codes for your manufacturer after whichever finish color you want. And what that means is those codes will show up in the final parts report. So when you do a job and you go to final parts to see your summary of all the parts for the job, that code is going to be tacked on to the end of the part numbers. So that's actually in the report itself, and then also in the exports that you create, like a CSV file that you would send to the manufacturer. So that helps them with identifying the part and the actual finish that part needs. So the newest final parts report can actually have different finishes for different parts, but it's a little tricky because the job has a certain finish. So that's kind of another topic, I guess, but let me just show you real quick how that works. So if we go over to edit job parts, this is actually the very same exact screen that we were just looking at, only it's the parts only for this job. So there's a couple different things, like we have a sync parts button here, which I've described in another video. But you'll notice that the finishes here, if we were to edit a part here and make everything but a certain color unsupported, then that price will show up in the final parts report. But if it's a job that's, say, clear, and there is a supported clear price for that part, then the program's just going to pick up that part, excuse me, and that price right then. So it's going to know that the job's in clear, and it's going to say, all right, I see a clear part or a clear price for this part, so I'm going to use that. But you can force it not to do that by removing the pricing from the other fields and making those unsupported for that specific part, so then the program has to find the first available part or price. So we're kind of tricking the program when we do that, but it is possible to show a different color with a different price in the final parts report if we modify those things for this job list of parts. And again, this is only going to apply to the job if we got to this window by clicking on Edit Job Parts. So that is something fairly new as well. But now let's go back to the master parts list. And so this is the next thing I wanted to mention was the multipliers. So you'll notice that all the parts here have a 1 multiplier. Now if you have different multipliers from your manufacturer for different types of parts, we can filter the list. Like let's say if all our door parts are certain multipliers, or is a certain multiplier for anything that's door related. So if we check all those boxes here, it's actually filtered our list to all those different door type parts. And now I can go up, change a group of parts. I can check my multiplier box and I can tell it I want a 0.6 multiplier for those parts. And you'll notice 1,656 parts are going to be updated here. So now it's gone through and updated all those parts, and we can clear the filter now and go back to our whole list. And since we're looking at anchors, and if we were to scroll down, we'd see a bunch of other parts that still have a 1. But let's say we want to do the same thing for stocks, stock length parts and extrusions. So I can check extrusion, since some catalogs have both stock part types and extrusion part types. I've checked both of those things, so it should be covering all the stock and other stuff. Now if you ever run into this where it didn't clear the filter properly from before, I can actually hit clear filter here, and then I can go try and do this again where it's going to just do the stocks and extrusions. And you'll notice now behind us it shows the proper thing. So sometimes this thing has so much capability that sometimes it gets a little quirky. And if it doesn't clear the filter up there, you might have to clear it in the specific column that you're working on. So that's what I did. I just cleared it by clicking on the clear down here, and that'll make sure whatever column filter you're using is cleared. This thing tries to clear everything, but sometimes it kind of misses, I think. But now that we've got extrusions and stock lengths selected, we can go in, check multiplier again, and I can do like a 0.55 for those. So it tells me how many parts are going to get updated. And it's always good to know how many parts you're working with. So let's try this again. I'm going to hit this clear filter. And I've got almost 4,500 parts in this catalog. So now I've set my door multipliers and my extrusion multipliers. Now it's time to just set everything else. If I know that everything else is another multiplier, so there's only a total of 3 different multipliers for this catalog, let's say, then I want to say, let's look at only the 1 multipliers, because I don't want to mess with anything I've already changed. So I'm going to filter to the 1 multipliers, and then just to confirm, I've got 1,167 parts, so I know it's not the entire list. But I can do a quick scroll down through here and see, okay, it's showing me only the 1s. So now I can go back to change a group of parts, hit this, and say, okay, these are a 0.5. And if that's my multiplier for all those parts, I've applied them. Now my filter isn't applicable anymore because there's no more 1 multipliers. So I can hit clear filter here, and now I've got my entire list back. So now I've set 3 different multipliers in my catalog for 3 different types of parts, and I'm all set. And then the last thing to mention is that I can go into my final parts, and if I had set the code for or if this job was created after I set my codes in my finish stuff, finishes, then they would show up here, the codes at the end of the parts here. But I didn't do that, so they're not really showing up. But this is another place, though, that I wanted to mention that you can change multipliers. You might know this and you might not, but you can do the same thing. You can filter. Now this is a little bit different grid, so I can either hit the funnel or I can actually type something in. And you'll notice that none of these multipliers changed because I changed all the multipliers in my master parts list. So any jobs that I already created, those are left alone. But one trick here is I can either filter here and then I can say change job multipliers and change whatever's filtered. Or I can actually go back to edit job parts where we looked earlier, and I can go here and say I want to sync all the parts from the master catalog to my job. So that's going to go grab whatever's changed in the master list, which would be the multipliers that I just went through. And there's a couple that got missed. That's interesting. But I can actually change those directly here as well. Those might have been parts that got deleted that are in this job but not in the master list anymore. But this is like a sample job anyway, I think. So, but yeah. So this is where I can do a change real quick like that. Like if I did all those things in my master parts list, but I want them applied to this older job, I can sync the parts from the catalog to the job, and then it's updated that for me. So now when I go back to final parts, I'm going to see all my updated values for my multipliers. So everything got updated easily that way. But I could have done the same filtering I did with the master list here, but it was just easier to do it the other way. So that's pretty much it. That's a rundown on working with multipliers and finish colors. Thanks very much.